Captain Amara Voss pressed her gloved palm against the cool viewport glass of the Aegis Sentinel, eyes tracing the pale blue and green orb of Varden II as it rotated serenely against the blackness. From here, the world below looked peaceful, verdant. Continents of forest and field, endless oceans glinting in starlight. Weeks ago, sensors had flagged promising mineral deposits beneath its crust. Now, survey teams were finalizing the terraforming grids that would turn Varden II into humanity's newest jewel. "Captain," came the soft chime of her console. Commander Ree's face bloomed on the holographic display, eyes bright with excitement. "Main survey team has confirmed the cobalt veins. We're ready to deploy the automated extractors." "Excellent," Voss said, leaning back as relief washed over her. "Patch it through to docking bay 3. Let engineering get them loaded immediately." "Aye, Captain." The holo faded, and Voss allowed herself a rare moment of relaxation. 6 months ago, the Confederacy's collapse had sent ripples through the colonies. Now, emboldened by unity and purpose, human fleets built new worlds of hope. No one had fired a shot at them in decades. They'd thought humanity had outgrown war until today. A distant tremor thrummed through the deck plates. Voss frowned. Above the starscape, the Sentinel's hull lights flickered. An alarm brightened the viewport's rim in urgent scarlet. She spun to her officer. "Report." Lieutenant Sato's eyes were wide. "Long-range sensors, something's charging on Ceres Prime." "Ceres Prime?" Voss echoed, recalling the dusty mining outpost on the asteroid colony 2 jumps away. "Relay the feed." The holodome flickered to life, revealing the squat domes of the outpost's habitat modules, the twisting tunnel lines threading between them. A moment later, a single pinprick of crimson light bloomed at the far rim of the dome. It elongated into a lance perfectly straight, impossibly precise. Before anyone could react, it struck one module, and in a heartbeat, the dome collapsed in a thunderous implosion. Dust and debris billowed outward, eclipsing half the settlement. In an incandescent cloud silence, then static, and Ceres Prime went dark. "Status on comms?" Voss's voice was steel. "Offline," Sato replied. No response from any relay. Voss caught Admiral Leon Kwan's eye across the bridge. The veteran commander of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet stood, broad and unshaken, but the tight curl of his jaw spoke volumes. "Red alert," she ordered. "All hands battle stations. Power to forward shields and turrets. Let's see what or who did that." A chorus of acknowledgments filled the deck as crew hurried to their stations. Voss strode to the main TACT console, where a 3-dimensional hologram of the inner system drifted in midair. 6 sleek, obsidian silhouettes blinked into view just outside the asteroid belt. Imperial dreadnoughts, their hulls polished to a mirror sheen, each more imposing than the last. "Opening communications," Voss said, fingers dancing over the console. The holo shifted to show a single red glyph pulsing over the lead dreadnought. Moments later, a voice cut through the bridge speakers, icy, clipped. "Citizens of the Terran Sphere," it intoned in perfect standard. "By Imperial decree, your expansion threatens the natural balance of galactic order. You have one opportunity to desist your colonization of sovereign space. Surrender all assets or be purged." "Purge?" muttered Sato, incredulous. Voss braced herself. "This isn't a negotiation," she whispered. "They're declaring war." Admiral Kwan turned to her, eyes steely. "Then we'll answer. With force." He keyed his patch. "Third Fleet, respond on my mark," Voss inhaled, steadying the rapid surge of adrenaline. She tapped in the coordinates for Ceres Prime and locked weapons. Mark. A wave of blue light rippled from the Sentinel, cascading across space toward the nearest dreadnought. But before the turbolasers could fire, A shockwave of energy rolled outward from the Imperial line, far more powerful than any known human weapon. It smashed into the Sentinels' shields, setting them ablaze like distant lightning. The bridge lurched, console sparked. Crew members cried out, scrambling to secure themselves. "Shields at 40%, reported Sato, voice tense. "They're overwhelming us." Quan's gaze never wavered. "Damage report. Forward turrets offline. Main engines at 50% efficiency." Engineer Lieutenant Murati stood, blood trickling from a gash on his brow. "We can't withstand another blast." Voss pressed her lips together. Every tactical simulation had warned of rogue powers, but humanity had hoped the Empire remained content to police the outer rim. Instead, these dreadnoughts carved through reality with waves of particle disruptors. "Return fire anyway," she ordered. "Divert auxiliary power to shields and weapons. We hold them here as long as we can." Firing. Sato's voice cracked with exertion. Beams of pale blue energy lanced toward the lead ship, but the Imperial shield shimmered and absorbed the impact effortlessly. Then, as if dismissing the human attempt, the dreadnought unleashed another crimson lance. This time, it struck the intrepid Dawn, one of Quan's cruisers, dead center. The explosion rocked the Sentinel so violently that Voss was thrown off her feet. Sirens wailed. Smoke curled along the deck plating. Comms were thick with panicked calls. Yet through the chaos, Voss remembered her duty. Keep the bridge alive. Keep her crew alive, and buy humanity a fighting chance. "Evasive maneuvers," she shouted, hauling herself upright. "Bring us closer to the asteroid belt. Use the rocks for cover, and scramble every fighter squadron." Seconds later, dart-like interceptors screamed from the hangars, weaving between tumbling boulders as the dreadnoughts pursued. On the bridge, Voss watched the holodome as plasma torpedoes arced toward the Empire's flank. One struck true, ripping a crescent crater in the sleek hull of the second ship. For an instant, hope flared across every face, but then the Imperial flagship decloaked a hidden squadron of assault frigates. They surged forward, guns blazing, and began cutting down human fighters with brutal efficiency. Admiral Quan laid a hand on Voss's shoulder. "They're testing us," he said quietly, "probing for weakness. We can't win this on firepower alone." Voss met his gaze. "Then we'll force them to see us as more than targets. We'll show them we're human, unpredictable, tenacious." She keyed her comm. "All ships, maintain formation around the Sentinel. Protect our core. We fight every inch." Out there, beyond the viewport, the stars seemed to sharpen in response. Humanity's spear had drawn first blood, and in return, the Empire had unleashed its fury. Captain Amara Voss took a steadying breath, her knuckles white on the console. Whatever came next, this would be the battle that shaped the fate of every soul under the Terran banner. The void between Ceres Prime and Varden II had become a furnace of light and metal. Captain Amara Voss stood again at the TAC console on the Aegis Sentinel's bridge, watching the holographic tapestry of battle unfold. Dozens of human ships, cruisers, frigates, and fighter wings swarmed the 6 Imperial dreadnoughts like swarming hornets around a bear. Every vessel flashed tracer lines, heat signatures, and warning pings, painting an intricate mosaic of offense and defense. "Enemy disruptor. Beam sweeping port flank," Lieutenant Sato reported. Her fingers danced across the console, allocating power reserves. "If they lock again, we'll lose the Dauntless." Admiral Leon Quan's jaw tightened. Not today. He leaned forward and keyed a hotlink to the Dauntless. "Lieutenant Morati, engineering strap down and hold together. I want port shields at maximum, even if it fries the capacitors." Below decks, Marine Sergeant Ellen Vargas barked orders to her boarding squad as they rushed to the hangar. Come on! Come on! Remember, breach, secure, extract data cores, sabotage their weapons nodes." The dozen Marines clambered into gravity boots, plasma rifles slung, hearts hammering with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. For many, this was their first taste of true combat. Overcomes, the Empire's cold voice echoed again. Surrender or be purged. It was less than a minute since the ultimatum, but humanity answered not with capitulation, but with a volley of concentrated torpedoes. The Sentinel's forward tubes glowed red as thermal seeker missiles launched, each a molten spear streaking toward the flagship's flank. Impact in 3, 2, 1. Sato counted down. The hologram exploded with an orange bloom as 2 torpedoes found their mark. For a heartbeat, the flagship convulsed in a shimmering shockwave that rippled through space, and then its shields collapsed in a cascade of solar flares. A savage, triumphant cheer broke out on the Sentinel's bridge. "We've cracked there." "Shields," Voss shouted. "All batteries. Fire on the lead ship." Turbolasers roared in unison. Beams of cobalt light stitched across the void and carved jagged scars on the Imperial hull. Plasteel panels peeled away like coral, revealing the dark skeletal frame beneath. Alarm klaxons blared through enemy comms. But the flagship merely recoiled, its broadside weapons rattling to life. The 4 humans could press their advantage, crimson. Lances stabbed through the firings. 3 of the Aegis Sentinel's forward turrets went offline in a single volley. Sparks danced in the smoke as consoles rebooted. Debris floated across the deck, and the hum of the engines faltered. Voss weighed her options. "They overextended," she muttered. "But they have reinforcements." Her eyes flicked to the projection of the deep lurking just beyond firing range. 3 more dreadnoughts decloaking into battle formation. The Empire's resolve was absolute. They would not yield until humanity lay broken. Admiral Quan spoke calmly into his headset. "Marines, execute boarding protocols on Dreadnought 1. Fighters, engage their flank straw fire away from our frigates." He turned to Voss. "This is it. We either break their line here or we die trying." Voss swallowed and nodded. "Send the codes." Across the hangar bay, Vargas's squadron thundered into action. Magnetic clamps locked them to the hull of the Imperial dreadnought. The outer skin groaned as explosive charges detonated, shearing open a boarding port. Inside, corridors of obsidian steel stretched away, illuminated by emergency red strips. The Marines plunged forward, every step echoing with purpose back in the void. Humanist 7 interceptors danced through swirls of debris, weaving between enemy lasers. Flight leader Tarek Cole's voice crackled. "I've got 3 bogies on my 6, Captain. We need close air support." "Copy that," Voss replied. "Echo Squadron, Vector 210 protect Cole's formation." As fighters skirmished, torpedo frigates rammed in from below, launching swarms of seeker mines that trailed lethal tails of plasma. Imperial frigates countered with point defense lasers, but the overload of human missiles forced them to divert power from their main batteries. Every moment they lost was a victory for humanity. Inside the dreadnought, Vargas's team reached the reactor casing. Their tech specialist, Corporal Ree, slotted an EMP charge into the breach. "Stand back," she warned. 3 heartbeats later, the device pulsed in a silent shock. Lights flickered and died. Alarms ceased. The dreadnoughts' gravity fields collapsed. Marines and soldiers alike floated in weightless disarray. Vargas grabbed Ree's arm. "Move!" They navigated through tumbling equipment and breached the data core vault. Ree hacked the interface, downloading schematics of Imperial weapon arrays. A red warning flashed. Counter-intruder response initiated. The hull shuddered as outside. A crimson beam lanced through the dreadnought's side, bisecting the chamber. The blast threw the Marines against the far wall, knocking Ree unconscious. Vargas struggled to her feet, plasma rifle raised. She saw smoke and sparks, then darkness. Back on the Sentinel's bridge, Vos saw the dreadnought listed dangerously. "They've lost power! We're crippling them!" Her heart pounded. "Concentrate fire on the reactor node punch through their core." "Confirmed," Sato answered. Tactical in position, firing salvo in 10 seconds. All across the fleet, turrets converged on the crippled dreadnought. 10, 9, 8. The intrepid Dawn, battered but still afloat, guided a final series of torpedoes into its flank. 7, 6. A brilliant flare erupted as the reactor ruptured, igniting a cataclysmic explosion that rent the dreadnought from bow to stern. Debris spiraled outward in a halo of incandescent fragments. For a moment, all was silence. Then the bridge erupted in cheers and tears, jubilation and grief entwined. Victory had been tasted, but at great cost. 2 human cruisers lay crippled. Dozens of fighters were lost, and 3 Imperial dreadnoughts still loomed, hulls bristling with weapons. Admiral Quan exhaled deeply and turned to Vos. "We've shown them we can fight," he said, voice low. "But we haven't won yet." She nodded, eyes bright with unspent emotion. "No, we're just beginning. They came to purge us, but instead they've awakened a fire they cannot extinguish." Beyond the bridge's viewport, the carcass of the shattered dreadnought drifted like a fallen giant. Human ships regrouped around the smoking void, shields charging, weapons humming. In the lingering glow, humanity stood defiant, heart pounding with adrenaline and hope. As the Aegis Sentinel reloaded its turrets, Captain Vos felt the weight of what lay ahead. The Empire would respond with greater fury, deeper strategies, and numbers beyond reckoning. But in the heart of the firestorm, she vowed one thing above all: that humanity would never kneel. Weeks of relentless skirmishes had transformed the frontier's gleaming battlefields into grim memorials. Scorched asteroid fields bore the scars of shattered frigates. Orbiting deflection grids flickered under constant bombardment. Entire mining convoys had vanished beneath Imperial disruptor fire. Supply lines strained under blockade tactics, and every resupply convoy became a gamble with death. Humanity's resolve held, but at a staggering cost. Aboard the Aegis Sentinel, Captain Amara, Vos stood before a hollow map of the contested sector. Admiral Leon Quan traced a trembling finger along a sinuous nebula field, the Ion Cascade. "Their cloak drives surge dangerously near these ion concentrations," he said. "Our intel suggests Imperial ships suffer system overloads when they attempt to maintain stealth inside the cascade." Vos studied the projection, a tangled veil of charged particles broiling like a storm. Navigation warnings blinked crimson. Unpredictable currents, sensor blackouts, and lethal static discharges. "It's a suicide run," she whispered. "But it's our only shot," Quan replied. "We can't outbuild them. We have to outthink them." Below decks, Lieutenant Commander Sato convened with engineering chiefs. "We'll need every joule of power for cloaking suppression and ion-hardened shields. Reroute non-essential systems to the forward capacitors. I want sustained bursts. You'll have 10 seconds between discharges before overload." Chief Engineer Murati cracked his knuckles. "We'll give you 10, Captain. But if we push any harder, the entire relay grid might implode." Vos's eyes flashed. "Then we use 10 seconds to hit them where it hurts." 1 or 2 cruisers caught in the cascade could break their blockade. At 03:00 hours, the fleet slipped from the ragged fringes of enemy space. Under cloak, human dreadnoughts and cruisers emerged like ghosts at the cascade's edge. Imperial picket ships gave chase, confident in their superior firepower. But as they advanced, alarms shrieked, sensors blacked out, targeting arrays flickered, and hull plating scintillated with raw electricity. Human phantoms struck without warning. The Sentinel's forward disruptor cannon pulsed through the ion, haze severing the lead Imperial cruiser's drive conduit. In the darkness, drifting vessels collided, ramming each other like wrecked leviathans. Fighter wings, cloaked by ion interference, swarmed the confusion plasma torpedoes, skittered into void-tossed destroyers, detonating in brilliant spurts of light. On the flagship's bridge, Admiral Kwan watched the holofeed with grim satisfaction. "They can't target us, not here." He turned to Voss, now full power to the Cascade beacon. "Trigger it." Moments later, a beacon satellite launched, its pulse igniting a synthetic ion storm that rippled outward. Imperial ships, stripped of stealth and scrambling sensors, became beacons themselves. Human torpedo boats dashed in, flinging magnetic mines along hulls. Explosions blossomed like supernovas against the cosmic backdrop, yet the Empire's response was brutal. Dreadnoughts beyond the nebula's edge bombarded the Cascade's outskirts, sending shockwaves that fractured navigation buoys and disabled communication relays. UN cruisers lurched under wave after wave of disruptor salvos. Shields groaned under the overload. Below decks in engineering, arteries of ionized coolant ruptured. Sparks arced through corridors, and smoke choked the air. Marati's voice crackled over the comm. "We're at critical. 10 seconds is gone, systems." "Shutting down." Voss clenched her fists. "Hold them," she ordered. "We're not leaving any ship behind." Across the field, fighter leader Tarek Cole guided battered interceptors toward their extraction point. "Fall back on my signal," he barked. But a straggler fighter, engine bleeding plasma, veered toward an ion-charged cloud. The pilot, Lieutenant Rowan, realized too late that the cloud was a deadlier hazard than enemy guns. A silent flash consumed his craft. Cole's voice trembled. "Lieutenant Rowan is down. I can't pull him out." Voss swallowed the lump in her throat. "We'll avenge him," she vowed. "All ships, lasting salvo on the flagship's aft torpedo bays. Then we run." The Sentinel and 2 escort cruisers converged on the Imperial flagship, battered but resolute. Disabling its torpedo launchers would tilt the balance. Beams of cobalt fire carved through the aft plating, exposing warhead magazines. A final volley of thermal torpedoes detonated the exposed stores in a muted roar that rippled through the ion miasma. The flagship shuddered, listing, its engines flaring out. But victory came at the precipice of disaster. As the last torpedo fired, cascading power columns surged through the Cascade, threatening to collapse its electromagnetic containment. Human and Imperial vessels alike were buffeted by the ensuing implosion. Amara. Voss gritted her teeth and engaged the Sentinel's overdriven thrusters. Around her, ships accelerated, weaving through snapping ion filaments. Explosions bloomed in the nebula's heart as the Cascade tore itself apart in a final cataclysm. Then, silence and emptiness. When sensors cleared, the frontier lay quiet under distant stars. Of the Imperial Armada, only scattered wreckage drifted. Of the human fleet, half the ships were limping or beyond repair. Many crews would never return home. Yet they had broken the blockade and, more critically, broken the myth of Imperial invulnerability. On the Aegis Sentinel's bridge, Admiral Kwan placed a hand on Voss's shoulder. "You gambled on their weakness and won, Captain." Voss met his gaze, voice steady despite exhaustion. "We paid a price, but now they know. Humanity fights with its heart as well as its guns, and we will never bow." Below, survivors began salvage operations on the drifting hulks, collecting supplies, rescuing prisoners, and marking for refuges. Word would spread quickly across the stars. The Empire had been challenged and repelled. In that fragile afterglow, a new hope took root, one that would blossom into the fires of revolution. As the Sentinel limped toward the ragged jump point, Voss stood at the viewport and watched the ion cascade's remnants fade into the void. The frontier awaited her, and humanity, battle-scarred but unbroken, was ready to claim its destiny.